Great news, 4 a.m. Club. It's official. We are now no longer crazy. We're no longer conspiracy theorists because everything we've been talking about and watching and paying attention to is now mainstream. I got a list. I got a lot of things to talk about today. This video is going to be action-packed, so get settled in. Let's go. First, your daily dose of Daisy. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about the events of the weekend and whether or not the executive order is being acted on. Next, I'm going to give you a rundown of everything I've been tagged in the last week or so that shows that this is now being discussed publicly by people in the know. And then finally, I'm going to get us to zoom out, because you know that's what I do. Zoom out and look at the big picture. But before I do all that, I just want to let you know, before the election, I had about 7,000 followers, and now I have over 57,000 followers, which means that just by my numbers alone, and I'm certainly not the only creator talking about this, I'm not the one with the most followers, but if we go by my numbers alone, there are 50,000 of us out there in TikTok land. That's a big old number. If you feel like the only lonely weirdo and there's only like 10 of us wringing our hands about it, no. We are part of an army, and we know what we know. Okay, the executive order. I'm only going to talk about this briefly because the Empress CJJ and Raw Cognizance both did really good breakdowns on their page. So go watch them. They're in the caption. I know you know them. I know you know them. We fam. Go watch them for their takes on it. Bottom line of that is, just because a supposed 45-day deadline has come and gone, December 20th, does not mean that it didn't happen. And it's probably a good thing that we didn't hear anything about it, because that means it's still in play. This is a matter of national security on a worldwide scale even. And so it is still completely classified and hush hush. You're not going to be hearing about it in a press release or in the mainstream media. Perhaps not for months. So if you're not hearing about it, don't let that be the reason that you decide to give up hope. This is likely going to be kept top secret until everything is finalized and moves have been made. And speaking to that topic is another creator, James Blackman, who's a former Ronald Reagan White House staffer. And he says that matters like this. I can't remember if he said this particular type of executive order or anything to do with national security. You're not allowed to talk about it over the phone, fax it to the 80s or email it. This has to be done in person. You have to see it with your eyes and sign it physically in a situation room, in a controlled environment. And he believes that that is why both Harris and Biden rushed back to DC, canceled their plans, and came in on Friday, December 20th. Now that is pure speculation because it has not been confirmed, but using our logic, there is a lot that says that that's likely what happened. And we don't know, we'll sit tight until we know, but all I'm going to say about that is the game is afoot. Okay, let's get into the list. These are just a few of the things that I've been tagged in. I know y'all are seeing a lot more of them. These are the people in our government who have been openly speaking about the election, possible interference, and in particular what Musk is up to. He shot himself in the foot with this whole government shutdown thing. Like, if people weren't concerned, if people weren't pissed before, they are furious now. He signed his own death warrant with that faux show. So Aaron Parnas has reported that I've got my list. Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall has responded. Okay, so members of Congress sent him a letter with their concerns about Musk's ties to Russia. He has responded, and I believe he has made those comments public. So both senators and an Air Force secretary are calling attention to it. I was also tagged in a recent TikTok video of AOC directly calling this an oligarchy and calling out Musk and Jeff Bezos in particular, in addition to billionaire owners of media, calling them out for now having bought their way into government and trying to call the shots. Representative Becca Balint, a Democratic congresswoman from Vermont, I also saw an interview with her directly, again, calling out Musk and saying he is now trying to take control. You didn't vote for the orange one, you voted for him, congratulations. And you saw last week, I stitched a video where, was he a senator? Yes, Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, in a speech on the Senate floor, called out this oligarchy and what's happening now with the alleged incumbent president and his basically billionaire buddies trying to call all the shots. And I hope you all saw Raw Cognizant's coverage of, I have to read this one because it's a long one, the Committee on House Administration. They held a hearing on foreign interference in our elections. He did a play-by-play of that on his YouTube channel, which is linked in his bio. I watched his review. You can watch the actual hearing. I watched some of it. I think it's over an hour long. Really good stuff. They specifically call out interference, not just in the voting itself, but in the whole time leading up to the election, and call out specifically Iran, China, and Russia. All right, so that's a lot, and that's only a little bit of what's being talked about and who's saying what. Now, I know none of those things are good news. These are all very bad things. So Gia, why are you so happy about it? I'm happy because the main reason I see people losing hope in my comments over the past 6 weeks, how long has it been? 5 years? I don't know. Since the election, people feel like they're losing hope because, number one, they're not hearing enough about what's being done. And number two, people in power, in positions of authority, weren't talking about it. So there's this fear that they're just going to roll over and take it and nothing will be done about it. So I'm not happy about what's happening. I'm happy about the fact that people are rising up and speaking out against it. And again, this bodes very well for the 4 a.m. Club. You notice I didn't speak in code like at all in this video because we don't have to anymore. I'm no longer being suppressed here. Famous last words, I hope not. This is now common knowledge. We're not conspiracy nuts. We had a feeling and we trusted that feeling. And we've been paying attention and following the evidence and connecting the dots. And now that's being reflected in the outside world. They're seeing it too, and they're talking about it and they're fighting against it. So remember a couple weeks ago when I made a video and I said, we shot the moon on this one, meaning that we're not just going to get the outcome that we want, still pending, but what we're getting is the dismantling of the old. And the dismantling of the old means that what we're getting in the future is going to be so much better than anything we've ever had before. We are seeing the GOP fighting themselves, falling apart at the seams. The cabinet members are not going through. The whole backlash against the shutdown bill and all of that bullshit, that's been a big to-do. And everyday people just getting so pissed at everything they're announcing. This is what we've talked about all along, because what this brings us is a revelation. I've been saying that we need a revelation, not only for people who have been fooled by him, but we need to see the intricacies of all of the corruption out in front. And that's what we're seeing right now. And when we have that revelation, what we can then have is a unification. We are now going to be fighting against a common enemy, which is the orange one and his helpers. And that is better than any election outcome. What this will lead us to in the future is not just candidates we want to see, but a unified society, a unified government that finally pulls their head out of their asses. What I think we'll continue to see with all of this revelation is seeing who's paid for what and who has bought their way into government, the big lobbies, the big companies. The revelation is going to continue, and that will be what we see next. And what all of this is going to do is dismantle all the corruption so that what we're left with is what's good and what's workable. And we'll build on that from a unified, solid perspective. So I consider all of this fantastic news. Happy holidays, everybody. And I'm just going to embolden you at your Christmas dinner. If you want to talk shit to your Republican family members, please do. Please raise some hell. We ain't crazy. We ain't Delulu. Everybody's talking about it now. And we are in the right. We knew it all along. And we've been knowing it, and we're going to keep knowing it as it unravels in the future.
It's so hard for me to shut the fuck up. I promise you it is. It's so hard for me to shut the fuck up. But I gotta say this one more time. Lotus will be POTUS. Lotus will be POTUS. Oh my God, and I'm gonna say the T word that ends with N and has no reason. Love you. 'Tis the season.
Watch this.
The Sunday before the election, I had the opportunity to meet with Elon Musk at his house for a couple hours to talk about the election. And aren't you all glad he's on our side? So I was talking to him. I spent about 2 hours, and we were going over election, and he told me he had all this data, and he told me how we were reaching out to Republicans we'd never reached out to before, and he told me, he said, I can tell you right now, I'm responsible for this. He said, I'm involved in every battleground state, and we're going to win every battleground state. And I am convinced that whatever he did, whatever rocket science thing he did, made a huge difference in this election.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Hey guys, one more thing that I didn't include in the last video. One thing that's important to keep in mind is that we have never been through this before. And I made some previous videos about the 2000 Bush versus Gore, and that was one of the only times that I remember in history where something even close to this has happened. And it's not even close, because that's why it's like, it feels like nothing is happening. It feels like it's really quiet. And in the military, there's something called InfoSec, which is information security. And like the number one thing that you're taught with information security is you're only told stuff if you have that level of clearance. So the best security of information is to just not talk about anything. So there's like 100 reasons why people would not be saying anything. The people in power are not gonna say anything. And I know other creators talk about that. So for people in the civilian world that have never been in the military or never had a secret clearance, like I've had a secret clearance, other people have top secret clearances, and you just don't hear about stuff because you're not supposed to hear about it. And it would actually be a big security risk if people were talking about it. So it's really backwards in thinking about how, you know, we're on a 24-hour news cycle and people are used to hearing updates when stuff is happening. And I believe this is such a big issue that it's in the realm of not telling people what's happening. But it feels weird if you're not normally exposed to that kind of thing. So I just wanted to say that. So just to let you guys know that this is a very unprecedented thing that we're going through. And if you compare it, a lot of the red hats want to compare it to 2020. And if we do compare it to 2020, what you noticed about 2020 is that every time there was a court case and every time anybody was dealing with what was going on at the same time that we're doing it now, everything was out in the open. So it's like, if this was the same as that, there would be a lot more stuff being said and the media would be going, you know, everything would be happening a lot different than what it's happening now. And what that tells you is that this is so serious that the people in charge, which is Joe Biden and the entire executive branch of government right now, they are putting everything together. And we haven't had to do this. It's something brand new. So there is precedent with how to deal with this, like with the laws and the protections that we have, but we haven't gone through something exactly like this before with everything that has happened. So that's why it feels weird, because it is weird, because we haven't done this. So I just wanted to say that quickly. Sorry the video's so long, but just trust yourself. I know you've heard be patient, but really we have to be patient. Try to take breaks and relax. And because like Kamala said, like 2025, 2025, she's going to be with us the whole way. So you just have to trust that.
So what's up, TikTok? So, today I decided to read Executive Order 13848. I've been sitting on TikTok here and just people talking about it, but nobody really never going into it. As I read this executive order that was written by Donald Trump, and I think in 2018, if it's what I think, it looks like Donald Trump has written a check his ass won't be able to cash. Or if he do, it's going to be a big one. And it's starting to explain to me, because I could never understand how a country like us, the United States, are allowing people like foreign adversaries to come into our politics, to interfere. Knowingly, you got Elon Musk all over the place, going back to Putin, going to China, going, we got people coming back and forth to Mar-a-Lago, interfering with our elections, and there's nothing in place. And then I'm starting reading it, and that's why they say reading is fundamental. Donald Trump obviously thought he was going to win in 2020 because he wrote this executive order. And you guys got to go read it to understand. But now it makes sense why Kamala Harris and Joe Biden flew back to Washington abruptly. Because in that executive orders, there is certain days that was written that you have to prove and show up in a certain amount of time. No deadlines were met. And I'm beginning to think that this executive order is finna come in play. And it was put in place by Trump. So stuff like what's happening now wouldn't happen. And he's the perpetrator. When Barack Obama came out and spoke about a few weeks ago, he said things are going to be a little difficult. And sometimes we have to fight. Things are going to be uneasy, y'all, I can tell. Now, I don't know, but it's starting to make sense. Because who wants to live in a country when people just take over and not follow the rules? You couldn't understand why the misinformation. And there's so many new politics, new people, new members that's coming out, especially the young people who's not understanding what's going on in this country and believing whatever misinformation they can believe, because billionaires have the money. They can put out this stuff on media. I didn't even know the guy that owned Fox owned Tubi. These people are getting money any way they can get it. And they're spreading misinformation to you to blow your head up, to make you think the Democratic Party is just out to destroy the country, when yet we're winning, and they won't let you see that we're winning. But in this order, it assures me that our country is coming back. I don't know how many people will probably be hurt in this, because we know that there's a group of people that will never accept what's going on. They don't care about cheating. They don't care about interference. They don't care about stolen votes. They don't care about any of that stuff. But if you don't fight, you don't win, especially when somebody's trying to take from you. There are people who will do anything to stay in power. And if that's to put your brother and sister together to unalive one another, they'll do what they need to do to stay in power. But I'm going to go back to the executive order, because I was just doing a little off-wall thinking. It makes sense now. It makes sense for the quietness. So I'm just saying to everybody, just be prepared to get yourself some stuff till it dies over. You're going to get some fools out there. I don't know what they got in place. in place. I don't know. Anybody want to think? And from my opinion, I think those drones is something to do with being prepared, because there's people wanting to overthrow this country anyways. It's going to be some stuff, y'all. So be prepared. And I'm not sure. I just know that it's quiet, and if you read it, it's a little complicated. But what I got out of it is an executive order, Homeland Security, as well as the military and everybody is pretty much on board, because you cannot win an election involving foreign nations. You're putting our national security at risk. Good luck, y'all.
All right, guys, this is a really big deal. The US Treasury just announced sanctions against both Iranian and Russian entities for their attempts to interfere in the 2024 US presidential election. Now, these are a result of Executive Order 13848, which was actually passed by Donald Trump, giving authority to the president and a subcommittee to investigate the integrity of any individual election. Now, these sanctions don't necessarily mean that they were wholly successful in those attempts. It's possible that they were thwarted, but it also could be a harbinger of more things to come. And what I simply mean by that is that Iran and Russia were both very vocal in their support for a specific candidate. They both wanted Trump to be elected, especially Russia. And the fact that we have confirmation from the US Treasury through these sanctions under this executive order suggests that there is more than meets the eye to what's going on here. I really suggest you watch this space, because there's probably more to come, and this is just the beginning of a trickle of information that may soon turn into a dam breaking.
This is for entertainment purposes only? Sorry, I have to say that. So on Christmas Eve, Eric Garland put out this tweet that they're going to be working some extra hours. You know, the president and vice president canceled their Christmas and went back to the office to take care of some stuff too. So anyways, they were working on some stuff, but they didn't say what. And then today, he came out with this tweet. Now, if you don't remember who Eric Garland is, he's an author, a consultant, he's a futurist, he's known for his work with strategic intelligence and trend analysis. And he also writes about geopolitics, economics, and societal trends, things like that. This tweet right here is juicy. When I risked my life to write about foreign spies in the 2016 election, I wanted you to know the truth about our democracy. And now you will. It took 8 years for foreign spies and domestic traitors to try to escape the traps we laid. This will be our finest hour. So let's just think, what was 8 years ago? 2024, so that'd be around 2016. What happened in 2016? Oh, that's right, we had another election. So I'm not going to speculate on what's going to happen, because TikTok will give me a community guideline unless I have proof. What I'm providing you proof of right here is that Eric Garland wrote that tweet. And if you've been following it all behind the scenes on what we're not allowed to talk about, you know. And if you haven't been following along at all behind the scenes, I don't blame you, because it's a little overwhelming. But if you want to catch up, you can go watch the Empress CJ. She's got a YouTube channel too. She'll kind of break it all down for you. You just got to kind of listen to her code.
Just to be clear, I believe it's absolutely possible that Kamala might have won. Unfortunately, I also don't think it fucking matters. See the newest POST on my favorite place where the sky is blue for more.
Bro, wake up. They're saying that the person I voted for might not become president. Why? Oh my god. Good morning, man. I feel like Anderson Cooper after drinking last night. What's up? My vote might not matter because he might be disqualified. Tell me about this. I need the hair of the dog. Just 1 second. Just wake up already. I need to know what the 14th Amendment is, Section 3. Yeah, it's a disqualification of you taking the oath of office if you engage in an insurrection. Oh, need a barf. He didn't do that. It was struck down by the Supreme Court for the Colorado decision when the state wanted to take him off the ballot. You're talking about Trump v. Anderson? That's actually different. Like, yes, like basically the Supreme Court said that states can't like disqualify him by taking off the ballot, but that doesn't mean anything because they didn't say that he didn't cause an insurrection. They didn't say anything about that. They didn't say that he didn't do it. They said that states individually can't. That means it has to be held by Congress. What does that mean? Well, it means that Congress could take like a special session and actually like determine if he actually did hold an insurrection, and then they could determine if he can actually have the oath of office. But he didn't have an insurrection. Oh, but he did though. He did 100%. He actually kind of admitted it by filing all those like court filings and all that stuff, saying that he had the right to do it because he was the president. That was like this whole point of being like, hey, I'm the president, I can do whatever I want. So he did admit that he did cause an insurrection. He just had the right to do it. Are you flipping kidding me right now? Just off of a technicality? I mean, if you're saying technicality in the sense of like overthrowing the United States government, yeah, sure, technicality, but I don't know, man. I gotta go back to sleep. Okay, Happy New Year's.
Hey folks, so you guys have been asking me in my last couple videos that I see the tweets by Eric Garland. Firstly, I don't even know who he was. I don't know who he is, and I did not know who he was. Say it the right way. And so I had to go do some due diligence, and I did. And I looked at the tweets on. I'm not associated with the X anymore after Elon Musk took it over. I deactivated my account, so I didn't see it. That's one of the reasons I didn't see it. But I did get here on TikTok. I'm pointing at my other phone here. I got on TikTok and looked at the tweets. I'm going to read them to you. The ones that I'm just going to read this. These are the two that I picked up on, and then I'll follow up with that. He posted this December 29th. He writes, "When I risked my life to write about foreign spies in 2016 in the 2016 election, I wanted you to know the truth about our democracy. Period." And then he says, "And now, quote unquote, you will." Period. Okay. Then the next tweet was this. "It took 8 years for foreign spies and domestic traitors to try to escape the traps we laid." The last thing he said after "it took 8 years for foreign spies and domestic traitors to try to escape the traps we laid," he followed that up with, "This will be our finest hour." So those are the only tweets that I've seen. Okay. Now, so what do I think about that? What I think about that is we already knew that these folks are involved in our elections. That's public knowledge. What we need to be concerned about is that part where he says domestic traitors. That's why in one of my videos, I made a point. Some folks were asking me, so I thought this was only about foreign interference, and so what does that have to do with DJT? Well, this is what it has to do with DJT. I've said this in other videos. These domestic traitors that he's talking about, those folks are, in my opinion, of course, I don't know. This is just my opinion. So those two different raids that were public, that were all over the television, the one down in Florida, and the one over on the East Coast, I think it was in New York City. The guy that owned the betting site, and then the guy Alfie down in Florida. Those were public. Made public. All the three-letter agencies were down in Florida, seizing all of his computers. Same deal with the guy that owned the business out of on the East Coast. I think it was New York. Got his computers. Then you're talking about all the different little breadcrumbs that we're getting about Elonia Muskrat, Scott, the Starlink, the video I made yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, the one where the AG down in Texas is talking about Elonia Muskrat and his involvement in the swing states. Then you have my man, Congressman out of New York City, Hakeem Jeffries, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, speaking on the swing states. So putting it all together, you've got folks overseas. We know who we're talking about because they made that public on election day when they said that the Russians were calling in these bomb threats. That was on public television, live. So we know. Then you've got Kamala Harris, who said that yes, we have folks watching the elections. We have folks looking at this. Yes, we got that covered. Basically, what she said. So what do I feel about Mr. Garland's tweets? Yeah, it's just when will it be our finest hour? That's the question. Now, before I get off of here, they just talked about President Carter. I mentioned the other day that for the younger folks, where his body's going to be in repose. It'll be down in Atlanta first. Then it's going to come up and be at the Capitol. Guess what day? January 6th. I just saw it. So we folks, this is getting ready to be territory that we've never ever been in the United States of America. So you've got a former president that lived to be 100 years old lying in state in the Capitol on the same day that the certification of the state electors is going to be taking place, on an anniversary of an insurrection that guy kicked off, the seditionists. So, what this guy's saying will be our finest hour, how spectacular would it be if all of it goes down on January 6th with Mr. Jimmy Carter laying his state right out in the dome, under the dome? I'm here for it. That's all I can say. I'm here for it.
Y'all, I can barely contain myself. The chatter is happening. It's been happening, and y'all know it's been happening. But we're going to stay grounded, and we're going to wait. I'm going to give you some accounts to go check out their posts for 12/31, which is today. Okay? Shells.yeah, right here on TikTok. Shells.yeah. Raw cognizance. Y'all are educated. Y'all can spell cognizance. Gretchen's got questions, okay? I don't want to, get too ahead of myself. Blue days are ahead, my friends. Blue days. They're coming. Stay grounded. It's coming.
Good morning, Blue Lulus, and Happy New Year! We made it to another loop. Now, let's chat a little bit about what happened yesterday in regards to the sanctions that Gotham City has put against the cold country and the Middle Eastern one. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Of course, feel free to go check my sources. They're Reuters, the Department of the Treasury, Google Answers, and if there's any other ones, I'll go ahead and tag them on here. Stop tagging me and stop flagging me, TikTok. Leave me alone! Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Now, what are sanctions? Sanctions are a form of punishment or penalty used to enforce laws, rules, or regulations. They can be imposed on individuals, groups, or countries by states or multiple states. Sanctions can take many forms, including financial sanctions, trade sanctions, arms embargoes, and travel and visa restrictions. Sanctions are used to encourage or a change in behavior, punish noncompliance with laws and international norms, or achieve specific policy objectives. They can be swift and substantial, and it can have more than just economic costs, such as this and this. So this is a big deal. This is not something that was taken lightly. Generally, sanctions go a long way in limiting the targeted entity's resources, such as financial, technological, or military. The independence, strength, and authority of both the sanctioning and the sanctioned body are two very important factors that determine the impact that the sanctions will have. The more influence the sanctioning body has, the more likely the targeted entity is to change its behavior. Essentially, a self-governing state issues a sanction on another country, organization, or individuals. The sanctioning country and its citizens and any organizations operating within its jurisdiction are required to abide by the sanctions in place. When an international body such as the UN issues the sanctions, all member states are required to honor, abide by, and enforce this sanction. The international body will typically also apply pressure to non-member states to try to enforce compliance with the requirements that they have outlined. So this is a huge deal, right? Because this is not just us that will be implementing these sanctions. It is every member of the UN, or at least that's how it typically goes. This is a big deal, and nobody would do something this substantial without considerable concrete evidence, because otherwise it would cause irreparable harm. This snippet is from the Department of the Treasury, and it talks about what kinds of sanctions these are. Interest in property, the designation of the persons described above, the cold country, and the Middle Eastern one, that are in Gotham City or in possession or control of Gotham City persons are blocked and must be reported to the OFAC. In addition, the entities that are owned directly or indirectly, individually or in the aggregate, 50% or more by one or more blocked persons are also blocked. So this is a huge deal. Anything that anybody who works with or comes along with the cold country or the Middle Eastern one is essentially immediately. Who do we know who works closely with them? In addition, financial institutions and other persons that engage in certain transactions or activities with sanctioned individuals may expose themselves to sanctions or be subject to an enforcement actions. The prohibitions include the making of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, or services to or for the benefit of any designated person or receipt of the contribution of provisions of funds, goods, and services from any such person. Now, this rang a big bell for me because I was remembering this headline. This was from a Reuters report that was back in September when they talked about the ways in which the cold country had been interacting with social media influencers here in the US. On Wednesday, the Justice Department revealed criminal charges against two former employees of the Cold Country Media. They said they were covertly funded an American political media company. The indictment outlines the alleged scheme where the Cold Country folks sent $10 million to two media business owners, Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan, who then paid almost said the word, Gotham City Team Joker influencers to create videos and social media posts. While the indictment does not name the accused media outlet, Reuters found that its Tennessee-based firm named Tenet Media, which publicly describes itself as the home as fearless voices. Now, all of this is going on at the same time as just 2 weeks ago, we had this headline. According to the journal, Dark Batman's lawyers outlined scenarios in which he might inadvertently disclose secrets to foreign officials to whom he regularly speaks, including the Cold Country President Thanos, with whom he's reported to have been in regular contact with since 2022. This is so significant that as it stands, Dark Batman is not entitled to enter his own facilities where such classified work is done and discussed, and is denied access to classified elements of payloads. The company recently signed this big contract, and it talks about all of these crazy high intelligence things that he's not even allowed access to anymore. Could that mean that he's one of the people that will be impacted by these sanctions? Now, I know that was a ton of information, but in light of everything that we have been talking about so far, this is huge, you guys. This is immense. This explains the raids. This explains why they canceled their Christmas plans. This explains why his security clearance was canceled, and now we're seeing these very consequential sanctions being put in place by our country a mere 2 days before the new rulemaker is supposed to be chosen. You do not have to take my word for it. I'm just a nurse. My majors are in biology, nursing, psychology, and philosophy. I'm good at pattern recognition, and that's about all I got. So I'll be back with you today, I imagine. If you enjoyed this video, found it informative, please give me a like, comment, and a follow. Join our Blue Lulu clan. It's nice and cozy over here. And as always, keep your eyes up, keep your feet on the ground, and I will see you next time. Ta-da! Good morning, Blue Lulus. We've made it to Tuesday, and as usual, there's a ton of stuff going on. The state of Louisiana is officially under a state of emergency following the attack on New Year's Eve, where a person drove a pickup truck down Bourbon Street. It's also reported that there were 3 or 4 additional individuals that were seen placing explosive devices around the area. There's other metropolitan areas that are also on high alert because we don't know if this is an isolated incident, particularly following the fact that Dark Batman's truck was seen exploding in front of the Joker's tower on the same day. And so we don't know who is responsible for this or how much more there could be in store. So if you see something, say something, no matter where you are. Don't let your wanting to seem reasonable cost somebody else their life. Dark Batman and the Joker are shacking up down there in Florida, and it has a lot of people wondering if they're doing that because that means that they can communicate without there being any sort of interference, and nothing can be tapped or recorded that they have to say. Your Body, My Choice dweeb, let's call him Ant-Man, came out yesterday directly saying that he is now anti-Joker and anti-Dark Batman, and that all the rest of his followers should be the same way. This comes just a day before the new leader of all the rule makers will be chosen tomorrow, and there's already been 2 defections on their side, and they could only afford a couple anyways, particularly when one of their Team Joker ones was found in a dementia care home. So I don't think that she's going to be voting. If you want more information about what happens with this upcoming speakership decision, as well as the check marking, look up Stevie's dad. He has a really good deep dive about that. I made a video yesterday describing what sanctions are and how they can be implemented, and another one of the EOs that was referenced in the U.S. Treasury's press release about it is EO, I can't remember the number now, 4204, I believe, and there's a lot of Blue Lulus that go in and talk about how that could be implemented. But basically it says that anybody who's working with the Cold Country and wants to do EI, all of their assets can be seized. You may know somebody who has quite a lot of assets. So if you don't think that our government is, so if you don't think that Gotham City is motivated by the truth and things that are actually happening, I guarantee they're motivated by that. So they're going to be sure that he didn't have anything to do with it. And I have so many people in my comments like, stop gaslighting me, nothing will happen, it's hopeless, I've lost my hope, you should lose your hope. And I keep having to repeat myself about this, but I don't think it's hopeless. These are not unprecedented times. We just had another general coming out yesterday saying that Dark Batman is a threat to our NatSec, okay? Like, and if we allow this to go on, we are effectively giving him the keys to the castle. He has multi-billion-dollar contracts with all of our space people, all of our satellite people, and everything. And if he truly is a threat to us, you think that they're not even going to double check? You don't think they're going to make sure that that's what we should be doing before just plunging us into an abject depression with no food, no clean water, and an authoritarian wasteland? You really think they're not even going to check? Maverick has spent 50 years as a public servant. He has nothing left to lose. Dude, he doesn't have anything after this. He's gonna make sure, okay? And Wonder Woman was the AG of the largest state in the country. A state that's bigger than many countries are themselves. They're gonna double check, bro. They're gonna make sure. And if they do, it's going to be with a lot of concrete evidence. They're not out here all just willy-nilly throwing stuff around like he does, because you guys aren't used to seeing discipline. They're disciplined, and so we will see in the next couple of days what they have in store and what they have determined. But the fact that those sanctions were put in place means that there is concrete evidence. And I think that they must believe that it's possible that this will be overturned, because otherwise the Joker would just overturn those sanctions immediately. Why would they put them in place for like 3 weeks? And if you think that the person who could not possibly tell the truth if his life depended on it just so happened to do this above board this time with the assistance of the world's richest man, while both of them are in cahoots with our firmest adversary, well then okay. But to me, that's the weirdest of all possible outcomes. And anyone coming in my comment section saying, oh, I'm gonna come back on the 20th and see how sad you are, I mean, you can if you feel like that's a good use of your time, but I'm not complying in advance. I'm not going to spend all of my time right now just sitting around crying and wallowing, because effectively there's nothing else that we can do. You're gonna cry about it? Or are we going to say, this is strange, shouldn't we double check that this is legit? Like, there's nothing nuts about that. So I'ma stay on the blue Lulu train until I have a reason not to be. But I think today and tomorrow will be very interesting. Also, I saw my first Dior bag last night. They've officially made it to Colorado. I'll put the video here at the bottom, but yeah, it was definitely not a plane. What it is, I don't know, but it was way up there, completely stationary and flickering a bunch of different colors. And in the event that that was ours, I don't see what it could have possibly been doing. Because if it was a secret, it would just be secret. We wouldn't be seeing it everywhere. If it was somebody else's, we would have taken it down. But we can't. And so this tells me that this might just be a visitation from another place. Who knows? I just hope the aliens think we're cute, because I think it was kind of cute. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like, comment, and a follow. Join our Blue Lulu clan. It's nice and cozy over here. And as always, keep your eyes up, keep your feet on the ground, and I will see you next time. See this right down here? That is a plane. That is an orb. And it's completely stationary. It has it. How long would you say it's been there? 5 minutes? At least. Oh. And that's not the only one. There's still is the other one still out there? Yep, there it is. There's one right there.
That's not a star. It's way too big to be a star.
And there's still that one over there. They're not moving. Plane.
I thought that was a train.
Orb. I thought so too.
And the I told you so is getting so loud. The Treasury Department just released a presser. They just did a public statement about some little shenanigans that happened with our little contest that we had, you know? So I know it's gonna be hard to take me seriously when I have a pigeon on top of my head. Say hi, Rosemary. There's Rosemary. Is my pigeon. Say hello. Say hello. So anyway, so like I said, some individuals were meddling in our little pageant that we had not that long ago. Anyway, the fact that the larger implications of this is we've been basically saying over the last couple of months that things seemed fishy. Something didn't seem right. And then over time, even the diehard MAGA people were starting to think that maybe something isn't right. And then, of course, over time, we started seeing all these spats that Donald Trump was doing, trying to blow up our international relations. Him and MAGA having their falling out. Elon Musk, being so down bad, he created his own fake bank account. So anyway, the point is, the fact that they did a press release says that they've already done and submitted all the evidence that they have. They've already done everything. They've done everything on the back end. They've ran it through filters over and over again so they can make sure they had everything right, because it is a government website. So they want to make sure that they're accurate with everything, especially when it comes to executive orders, especially the executive order 13848, that one. The report has already been done. Everything's already been handed in, turned in, signed off, which means that this is the first domino to fall. This is the first domino. So what I read the end of that article, and basically what it means is that anybody who got money, gifts, even something simple like furniture from any of these sanctioned countries, like they're in deep doo-doo. They're in deep doo-doo. But something of this magnitude needs to be rolled out slowly, so it's not as much of a shock. So basically, they've been gathering evidence this whole time. It also makes sense why Kamala Harris canceled her holiday plans and rushed back to Washington, D.C. Like, a lot of them canceled their plans. They were like, something's going down. They canceled it and they rushed back to D.C. And then December 31st, the Treasury Department, one of the agencies that has to submit a report according to the executive order, it makes sense why she rushed back, especially something like this. Now, like everybody's saying, this is just the first domino. This was released on New Year's Eve. So the fact that we're getting this right at the end of New Year's says something's going to happen. And it already is happening. So all the people that have been doubting us this whole time, that have been saying that we're nuts, we're crazy, that all this, like, it's a conspiracy theory, all that good stuff, is like, if you think about it, this is totally different than from 2020. Totally different. This time, this is proof. Verifiable proof, because they don't want a repeat of 2020. They don't want people to get all up in arms. They wanted to roll things out slowly so that way it's easier for us to digest something of this magnitude. If it is true what this is leading up to, and if what we're reading from the Treasury presser is ultimately true and our theories are turned out to be valid, it is quite literally the crime of the century, of history, of our history. So, like I said, it makes sense now, just kind of taking a step back. The thing that blew my mind, that kind of made me stomp my feet and be like, what? Was when they brought up Iran in the press release. They brought up Iran, the IRGC. They actually have a dedicated agency. And they actually, in the press release that the Treasury Department said that they did some things. And it was like, the thing to me, it was like that is the United States government saying this. That's not a small thing either. She's being really insistent on being on top of my head. Anyway, so all I gotta say is, I wanted to bring this to your guys' attention. It's 8:20. It's 8:20 at night over on the East Coast. It's 5:20 p.m. where I'm at. We're just about to hit 2025 ourselves here soon. If you're across the pond, hope you had an amazing holiday and Happy New Year's. Happy 2025. Hopefully 2025 is already looking beautiful, and I have a feeling that 2025 is going to be the start of an incredible journey, of something really good, really huge, world-changing in a good way. Let's send our positive energy out. Let's breathe love and compassion and decency and humanity into 2025. Ground ourselves when that clock strikes midnight going into 2025. Ground yourself, take a deep breath, breathe positivity into 2025. And then 2025, it's going to be good. Anyway, wanted to show you guys that mind-blowing update.
So breaking news, Trump just announced that he's going to be holding a victory rally on January 19th. That day sounds familiar, right? Yeah, because it's the day before Inauguration Day. And they are promoting it as, quote, the victory rally that you'll never forget. Weird. Why, if your Inauguration Day is on January 20th, would you need to gather all of your MAGA supporters in one place to celebrate your victory, which you're literally about to do the next day as you get inaugurated, unless you're concerned that you're not going to be inaugurated for whatever reason and you need all your supporters in one place. I don't have anything else on this one. I'm just very confused. There's like an open sign up that you can sign up to attend this rally. I think we need to keep an eye on this and see what's going on.
Okay, holy shit. Am I being tested right now by my higher self? Something is happening because seriously, I just had a discussion with my husband and, we're talking about the video I posted, which I did not expect to garner so many views. But what I said was my visions about, the contest and what could possibly happen. And, for some reason, I'm feeling very strongly about what I said. And I think because I'm feeling, the feeling is growing stronger about, what's happening with this and how it'll end up. My husband decided to talk about what intuition is. He's very logic-minded, so he does not care for the word intuition, and we just had this whole discussion about psychology and all that jazz. I understand. But anyway, he was like, you guys are basically, we are delusional because we believe things will change, something will shift. And I after having a discussion, I'm telling him, you know what, this is not something we can just, we don't have to talk about this hypothetically. We just literally just wait and see what happens. And then you can say I told you so for being delusional, but until then, I don't understand why I'm getting crap, because I believe firmly in everything that I've witnessed throughout these months and making connections that this does not feel right. It's not just about a feeling. No, these feelings are based on facts and information, evidence. Yes, they may not have come to light, but we know something is happening behind the scenes, do we not? I mean, this is insane. Seriously, wait until it's over, until everything's been solidified. Whoever is, plopped into the White House, then you can say, you were wrong. But until then, what is the point? Just wait. God. Sorry, I'm just, frustrated. Okay, but you know what? Still calm.
Okay, so this video is dedicated to every person who has come into my comment section since I started making this last little sequence of videos saying, yeah, I just don't think they're going to do anything. Here's the deal with that. It's not necessarily that in most other contexts, would I agree with you? Yes. This is a no, and here's why. So there's a large R country. It's cold there. Daddy Vladdy runs the place, okay? Basically, it looks as though there's been tomfoolery in 4 or 5 different countries. We might be 4th or 5th. So, if you meddle internationally in enough beauty pageants, people tend to notice. So that's the thing, is that I don't know that that is going to be something that they can choose to do. I feel like they might have to react because it's not just us. This would be on an international level. Meaning, this thing could get kicked out for a while, and we might not know the conclusion for a hot second. The reason why I keep referring you to St. Gale is because his special interest appears to be constitutional law, and he knows much more than I do about the processes that we are about to witness and go down to determine who, what, where, and how the presidency will be assumed. Because if basically what is going to happen is the new Congress is going to be sworn in on the 3rd. Okay? This is when this happens. They then choose a speaker, and then the election is certified on the 6th. So between the 3rd and the 6th, they have to pick a speaker. The reason why Joe Biden and Kamala canceled Christmas is because on the 19th, that DNI report dropped, and it showed the tomfoolery that occurred. The reason we know this is because both of them were en route to their respective states for Christmas and were routed back, lights and sirens, to the White House. They remained there the duration of Christmas break. No one knows why. So, it appears as though perhaps sanctions were written, perhaps Joe Biden and Kamala realized what they are looking at as far as some sort of a certification process, that it isn't going to be straightforward. They may have literally had to phone a friend and brush up on what is going to happen. Joe Biden, knowing how savvy he is, probably said, I know, let me call up Chucky Boy and Mitch McConnell and company, and let's have ourselves a little powwow here so we can all get on the same page. Because I think what we are looking at is, I believe, called a contested certification. And basically, this is what Gore v. Bush should have happened. This is how it should have gone down in that election cycle, and it didn't. It went to the Supreme Court. That is actually incorrect. It should have been decided by Congress via, I want to say it's the 20th Amendment. Once again, St. Gale will tell you which amendment it is. I'm not entirely sure. Any hoodles, Congress will likely vote on the presidency because DNI and DOJ will be briefing Congress between the 3rd and the 6th to make them aware of the tomfoolery that was found in this particular cycle. And before people get excited saying, well, who decided about this whole like automatic check for tomfoolery, that would be Donald Trump. Donald John Trump signed that executive order, so really it is up to him. Now, the things that kind of add a little spice over this holiday is that yesterday we caught wind of early sanctions against Iran and Russia. Going into a holiday, that's a little sus. It did state in one of the press releases that it was related to 13848, which makes me think that there's more to that was just the very tip of it. And furthermore, there's also Executive Order 14024 that will then take any personal profits, personal monies, personal gains tied to certain countries in relation to tomfoolery or attempted tomfoolery, and will freeze those assets. Meaning there's a good chance that Spaceman might be up shit's creek because his assets might be getting a little freezed for a hot second until they can determine this. Now, according to St. Gale, there are different avenues, as I said, one of them being that basically Congress can elect to open an investigation into this election cycle and to get a bigger picture of the tomfoolery afoot. And that would make Joe Biden remain in the White House for an additional, I want to say it's 45 days, But bottom line is that inauguration could get kicked out to March. That is on the table. That is a valid resolution per the Constitution. So, as I've said, I don't think that doing nothing is going to be something that they're going to be able to do. I think, geez, my hand is shaking. I think they're going to have to deal with this. I don't think that just sitting on it is going to work this time. There's too many hands in the pot. The tomfoolery is too deep. It has happened in too many countries. I think at this point, they know. So yeah, just coming in comments being like they're not going to do anything. Okay.
So we know that Elon Musk owns Starlink, right? And we also know that Starlink was used as the internet access for the polling machines, right? What some of you may not know is that 2 days ago, one of the Starlink satellites that Elon Musk owns miraculously just fell apart and burst into flames over Frisco, Texas. People just thought it was part of a meteor shower. Does anybody know what the punishment actually is for espionage and treason? Because I think it should be a firing squad of black women for what they were just put through this last week. I also think that all of his assets and his billions of dollars should be seized, and that money should go to pay reparations to black people and Native Americans. Because this country was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of those people. What do you guys think about that punishment?
No, because the next couple of weeks, the next couple of days especially, are going to be a roller coaster that we've, frankly never seen before in the United States. So everyone go ahead and mark your calendars for this coming Friday, January 3rd, and the following Monday, January 6th. On January 3rd, Congress is meeting to decide the next Speaker of the House. And with all the MAGA infighting that's been going on, it's clear that Trump's Little Johnson is on the outs with a lot of the Republican Party. And with the unprecedented slim margin within Congress, I think it's 220 on the Republican side and then 215 on the Democrat side. Not to mention, there are a couple absences to be expected, so that margin is even slimmer. All the Dems really need is 1 or 2 Republicans to not even switch sides, but just to be brave enough to speak up and be like, we don't want Little Johnson as the speaker again. And another thing I want to say is that we need to be prepared for things to go very slowly. Things need to be technically correct. Congress has a whole bunch of rules and guidelines that they need to follow for all these processes when, things like this happen. So they need to follow every single step to a T so that when it all goes down, MAGA can't come out and, get out on a technicality. So moreover there, don't expect, when Congress meets to certify the US election for Kamala having, the final vote or whatever, don't expect her to have some big thing where she stands up and says, this was not free and fair. Don't expect that. She is going, more than likely, can never say 100%, obviously, but she is more than likely going to certify the election. And that is because, again, as a technicality, the election needs to be certified for interference to be proven, technically. There's also the technical matter of presidential succession. If for some reason the president is not able to serve, then it goes to the VP, and then the Speaker of the House, and then the Speaker pro tempore of the Senate, and then the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of the Treasury, and then so on. It continues. The matter of presidential succession is also another reason that people suspected that Joe and Kamala canceled all of their Christmas plans last minute and flew back to DC. Again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but the technicalities, just the rules of everything that they have to follow, I think that it took all this time to figure out, okay, what do we need? What do we need to proof ourselves against? Just all this stuff. So again, this Friday, January 3rd, potentially we may get a vote that says that we have a new Speaker of the House. And then a couple of days later, on Monday, January 6th, which fitting date, we could see something even bigger. And I know, this all sounds crazy, and it's all just conjecture at this point. Us lay people don't really know anything for 100%. But, I'm riding on this hope right now, and my advice would be, if you start to feel that little flicker of hope, hold on to it and hold on tight, because something is coming.
Okay, guys, you've probably begun to see this in your timelines, but let me just break it down for you and explain it. Today, the day that I'm making this TikTok, is January 2nd, meaning that tomorrow is January 3rd. And that is the date that every 2 years, when a new Congress is sworn in, that typically happens on January 3rd. And that is the day that not only are every member of Congress, House, and Senate sworn in, they choose their leadership. So on the House side, they choose their House Speaker, and the senior leadership on the majority side, they choose their minority leader, who this time will be Hakeem Jeffries, and all of the minority leadership, the whip, all of the people who do the jobs of leading the House. And on the Senate side, they choose their Senate majority leader, Senate minority leader, who will be Chuck Schumer. It'll be John Thune, who's the Republican. So they're going to officially vote for their leadership. Okay, they do that on the 3rd. So here's what's fun. Republicans have not consolidated around the idea of voting for the current House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and renewing his speakership, but they have to vote on that on the 3rd, tomorrow, the 3rd. And if they're not able to agree to make him speaker or find some other speaker, a really interesting thing will happen. They'll do the funniest thing ever. The speaker election looks tight. The presidential election certification is just days away. Could Republicans impose their own January 6th through sheer obstinacy? Meaning, per the Constitution, if you don't have a speaker, you can't certify the election. So, the last time that we were supposed to certify the presidential election in 2021, Trump, being embarrassed, called for a Stop the Steal rally in Washington, D.C. That was in 2021, January 6th. And his mob of his supporters who were at that rally, some of them broke off, went into the Capitol, sacked the Capitol, smashed through the windows, brought a noose to hang Mike Pence, and chanted, "Hang Mike Pence," smashed into the windows, threatened lawmakers, beat up police officers. 6 people wound up dying, a couple from suicide. Officer Sicknick was laid in state because he had a heart attack out later and died. Literally caused mass mayhem. More than 1,100 people have been to prison because of this. Not Donald Trump, of course, because he's immune from all law, according to the Supreme Court. But this was one of the biggest attacks on the Capitol. It was the biggest attack on the Capitol in our history, bigger than ever happened even in the Civil War. A massive attack because Donald Trump was embarrassed for losing to Joe Biden. So that was the last time January 6th mattered. Before that, people didn't even pay attention to these dates. This time, fast forward to today, the purpose of that mob on January 6, 2021 was to stop the certification of Joe Biden's election. This time, if Republicans can't choose a speaker by Monday, January 6th, they can't certify the election. So ironically, they'd be pulling a January 6th insurrection on themselves because per the Constitution, you can't certify the election until you have a speaker. So irony of ironies, Republicans who have papered over January 6th, even though they themselves were being threatened by this mob, Republican lawmakers who said January 6th wasn't a big deal, are suddenly going to have to get their shit together by January 6th, or they can't certify their demigod, their vice president, Donald Trump's election. I don't know, maybe the real boss, Elon Musk, will come up with a solution and put it through Doge and fix it because somebody has to, or they can't certify Trump. Oh, this timeline is getting more and more interesting every day, isn't it? Get your popcorn ready. It's gonna be an interesting few days. Peace.
Yeah. She's gonna be president. She's gonna be president. It's not even being delusional at this point. She's gonna be president, straight up.
I'm sorry, they put the unscalable anti-riot fencing around the court that is supreme? That's interesting. I wonder, because, at first I was like, the fencing, that's not for us. Okay, we don't do that thing. As much as they love to get on the internet and scream that we're the ones that do all the violent things, every time they're disappointed, they're the ones that run out and go destroy something. That's them, okay? Look, they just called someone else a T word, and now it's coming out that it's more of their people. Again, every time something happens, it's one of them. But here is fencing around the White House, the Capitol. Okay, I think it's a bit much. It's not for us, but it could be precautionary. But around SCOTUS? Well, I wonder which group of people is thinking that SCOTUS might be able to fix something if Congress makes a decision that they don't like. It's probably not the side that has been reaffirming in the community that SCOTUS has zero jurisdiction over what Congress decides to do with the test and all of that, and that, no, it can't go over there, they can't fix it. But those people don't know that because they don't read, and they don't believe anything that wasn't a toilet twat from one of their co-daddies. So, unscalable fencing around SCOTUS is most definitely not for us. So, we know who that would be for. The next question is, why would they get so upset with SCOTUS that unscalable anti-riot fencing needs to go up? I'm sure it's nothing. It's nothing.
Y'all, did you see that Trump just announced that he's going to be doing a victory rally on January 19th, the day before? And I don't remember it ever being done before. Has any other president done like a victory rally the day before? So he's going to be at the Capital One Arena, which is like a mile away from the Capitol complex. I think it's everyone's been wondering like why they've been putting up like the big barriers and stuff, because they're like, why? Like the people who stormed the Capitol last time, they won. Who are they protecting people from? Now, if our theories are correct and things are going to change between now and the 20th, it's kind of convenient that he would already be assembling all of his followers. They'd already be planning to be in Washington if he wanted to, I don't know. It's giving January 6th. I don't know. What do you guys think? A victory rally the day before. Not a parade after, not a rally after, saying thank you, day before. Oh, I just had a thought after I finished filming that. It's kind of surprising if he wanted to do victory rallies, he didn't do like a tour of rallies to thank everybody around the country and hold rallies in each of the big areas that supported him. And like, that would make more sense than just the one. The man loves a rally. He hasn't done one. And now he's doing one.
Well, friends, if we cared about or chose to remain loyal to the text of the Constitution, then by all rights, January 6th should be Trump disqualification day. But do we really expect it to be? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, as January 6th election certification day approaches, let's have one more go at the 14th Amendment's disqualification of an insurrectionist from being sworn in as president, academic discussion though this may prove to be. I want to start by reading a short piece that ran in The Hill a few days ago authored by two lawyers, each of whom was previously a clerk at the United States Supreme Court. Headline, Congress has the power to block Trump from taking office, but lawmakers must act now. And that article begins, the Constitution provides that an oath-breaking insurrectionist is ineligible to be president. This is the plain wording of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Quote, no person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. This disability can be removed by a 2/3 vote in each house. Disqualification is based on insurrection against the Constitution and not the government. The evidence of Donald Trump's engaging in such insurrection is overwhelming. The matter has been decided in 3 separate forums, 2 of which were fully contested with the active participation of Trump's counsel. The first fully contested proceeding was Trump's second impeachment trial. On January 13th, 2021, then President Trump was impeached for incitement of insurrection. At the trial in the Senate, 7 Republicans joined all Democrats to provide a majority for conviction, but failed to reach the 2/3 vote required for removal from office. Inciting insurrection encompasses, quote, engaging in insurrection against the Constitution or giving aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, the very grounds for disqualification specified in Section 3. The second contested proceeding was the Colorado 5-day judicial due process hearing, where the court found by clear and convincing evidence that President Trump engaged in insurrection as those terms are used in Section 3. The Colorado Supreme Court affirmed. On further appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, the court held that states lack the power to disqualify candidates for federal office and that federal legislation was required to enforce Section 3. The court did not address the finding that Trump had engaged in insurrection. Finally, there's the bipartisan inquiry of the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. More than half of the witnesses whose testimony was displayed at its 9 public hearings were Republicans, including members of the Trump administration. The inescapable conclusion of this evidence is that Trump engaged in insurrection against the Constitution. In particular, Trump unlawfully demanded that his Vice President, Mike Pence, throw out votes in the Electoral College for political opponent Joe Biden, a power he did not have. While the riot was in progress, Trump used Pence's rejection of his demand to further inflame the crowd and cause them to chant, "Hang Mike Pence." Now, some will argue that the Supreme Court decision in the Colorado case, Trump versus Anderson, precludes or prevents Congress from rejecting electoral votes when they convene on January 6th on the basis of the 14th Amendment disqualification. This view lacks merit for 3 reasons. First, the majority's suggestion that there must be new implementing federal legislation passed pursuant to the enforcement power specified in the 14th Amendment is what lawyers call dicta. Dicta are the musings of an opinion that are not required to decide the case. The holding that Section 3 is not self-authenticating may be an alternate holding, but thoughts about the kind of implementing statute required are plain dicta. Dicta are not precedential. The 4 dissenters in the Supreme Court opinion strenuously objected to this part of the opinion as overreach by the majority, the 5 majority justices, overreach to decide a question not presented. This overreach is a power grab, which Congress is not required to credit. Second, counting the Electoral College votes is a matter uniquely assigned to Congress by the Constitution. Under well-settled law, this fact deprives the Supreme Court of a voice in the matter because the rejection of the vote on constitutionally specified grounds is a non-reviewable political question. Third, specific legislation designed for this situation already exists. The Electoral Count Act was first enacted in 1887 and later amended and restated in 2022. That statute provides a detailed mechanism for resolving disputes as to the validity of Electoral College votes. And friends, here is probably the most important passage. The Act, the Electoral Count Act, specifies 2 grounds for objection to an electoral vote. 1, if the electors from a state were not lawfully certified. Of course, we saw that in the Trump fake elector scheme last time he tried to steal a presidential election in 2020, but that doesn't really apply this time. Or 2, if the vote of 1 or more electors was not regularly given. A vote for a candidate disqualified by the Constitution is plainly in accordance with the normal use of words not regularly given. Disqualification for engaging in insurrection is no different from disqualification based on other constitutional requirements, such as age, citizenship from birth, and 14 years residency in the United States. Now, here is the procedure that would be involved if members of Congress decided to object to certifying the Electoral College count. To make an objection under the Count Act requires a petition signed by 20% of the members of each House. Then, if the objection is sustained by majority vote in each House, the vote is not counted, and the number of votes required to be elected is reduced by the number of disqualified votes. If all votes for Trump were not counted, Kamala Harris would be elected president. Now, friends, this last paragraph is where the rubber meets the road, at least procedurally, because disqualification of an insurrectionist from being sworn in as president would require at least some Republican participation. The unlikelihood of congressional Republicans doing anything that might elect Harris as president is obvious. But Democrats need to take a stand against electoral college votes for a person disqualified by the Constitution from holding office unless and until the disability is removed. No less is required by their oath to support and defend the Constitution. Friends, let's get down to brass tacks. First of all, I know what I would do on January 6th if I were ever in a position and I were ever called upon to say, do you object or do you support? Do you vote in favor of certifying the Electoral College votes for an adjudicated insurrectionist? My whole life, I took my oath of office damn seriously. I took the oath several times, starting back in the 80s as a United States Army officer. When I left the Army and joined the Department of Justice, I took that oath again. I swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I would not be upholding that oath if I were in a position to vote whether an adjudicated insurrectionist should be allowed to serve in federal office, never mind the highest office in the land. I couldn't, in good conscience, vote in favor of an insurrectionist becoming president. That would violate my oath of office, and I wouldn't hide behind the Supreme Court musings and ramblings and dicta, saying, gosh darn it, we know the Constitution doesn't say it, but we'd like to see some new federal legislation, which, it's never going to happen. We know it's never going to happen, but let's just put it in there. But friends, let's be honest. What should happen and what will happen, as different as night and day, as different as black and white, as different as dictatorship and democracy. What will happen is Donald Trump is very likely to be certified as the next president of the United States. What should happen is politicians should rise up, should respect their oath of office, and should vote that an adjudicated insurrectionist is disqualified from holding office again. Because justice matters.
There are only 2 ways for undervotes to happen. Way number 1 is abstaining from voting for down ballot races. So you go to the precinct, you get your mail-in ballot, you just fill in president and then nothing else. Way number 2 is splitting your ticket, voting Trump and then Democrat, or voting Kamala and then Republican, or voting third party and then that's the only way for an undervote to happen. So let's follow the logic. Only one of those scenarios works with these undervotes, right? That the only one that fits with your narrative that you've got going on of Kamala being unpopular is that people are going to the polls and they are voting Trump for president, and then they are voting for the Democrat. That's the only way for undervotes to indicate that she's unpopular. So then we should see her underperforming the Senate candidates, right? Here's Nevada, Jackie Rosen. Here's Harris. Wisconsin, here's Tammy Baldwin. Here's Harris. North Carolina was weird. Everybody hated Mark Robinson, so there's Josh Stein. And there's Harris. Yes, he overperformed. Everybody hates Mark Robinson. Here's Pennsylvania, because Georgia didn't have a Senate race, but there's, who? Bob Casey. Sorry, there's Bob Casey. And there's Harris. And despite that, when you look on a county level, she's still underperforming in basically every county. This is Philadelphia. There's no reason why she should be underperforming her down ballot candidate, but here it is. The squiggly blue is the down ballot. She's underneath the down ballot up until like this point, and then they start being on par. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump is like always overperforming his down ballot. And then you've got towns like Paterson, New Jersey, where Kamala's always overperforming, but Trump has this massive gap between him and his down ballot candidate. As far as I know, there's nothing wrong with Curtis Bashaw. He seems like a stand-up guy, but there's this huge gap between Trump and the down ballot candidate. In this town, I think there's something like 15% of his votes are undervotes. And no, that is not normal under any circumstances. I've checked other years. It is not that way. I couldn't get Paterson 2020 because everything was mail-in, so the precinct results are weird, but here's New Jersey as a whole. You can see that is not the case in 2020, which is the year that you are calling the anomaly year. So I'm more than willing to be wrong here, but the explanations I am receiving for this voting behavior are not sufficient to support the math that I am looking at, and math does not lie. Please, if somebody knows more about data analysis than me, who has been a student of Google University for 2 months, please come and inform me, because I am dying to know why these results look this way. It is not normal.
I came across a rumor on another site that could 100% be false. This is 100% fictional, but the rumor is that Mark Rutte is in town in Camp David. Now, in a fictional scenario, why would Mark Rutte be important? He's the Secretary General of NATO. He's a pretty big deal. So in a fictional scenario, let's go over why it would be important if Mark Rutte were in town at Camp David. So one, we'd have crisis diplomacy. Meddling doesn't just affect the US, it can affect everybody internationally. So his presence could signal a high-level meeting to address security concerns. That would preserve, like the democratic processes. Now, Camp David has historically been used for discrete, critical discussions among leaders. Secondly, alliance coordination. As NATO Secretary General, Rutte might be meeting with U.S. leaders to coordinate a unified response to cyber threats or disinformation campaigns. And then 3, we have mediation role. Rutte might serve as a neutral mediator if there's an internal or an international tension. If there were allegations involving multiple countries or powerful individuals, a figure like Rutte could be seen as a stabilizing presence trusted by both Europe and the US. The 4th, strategic consultations. So while someone's involvement might hint at a technological angle, such as the use of social media platforms or AI in spreading misinformation, he could be meeting to brainstorm on how to tackle that too. He could also just be there for damage control or alliance assurance. He would have to make sure that alliances remain intact despite potential scandals. He might also just be reassuring NATO partners that the US is addressing internal challenges transparently. But the last thing for me is the symbolism. Camp David typically is pretty historically significant venue when it symbolizes the seriousness and confidentiality of having discussions. And in my eyes, It basically signals to the public that the leaders are taking a decisive action without causing panic. So in this fictitious scenario, you put all those together, it could mean a lot. So thanks for listening to my completely fictional story. Like and follow for more.
So remember in the beginning when this all just seemed like a theoretical possibility based on certain anomalies and math not mathing and shit going down and us being like, hey, we see patterns, and everyone's like, no, to an operational possibility. Kind of cool.
Trump is starting to warn his supporters that there might be problems with people who were nominated and getting appointed, and that there might be problems soon. So he said, we just won a historic landslide, which he didn't. It was like one of the 5th closest votes in history. And mandate from the American people, but Senate Democrats are organized to improperly stall and delay the confirmation process of many of our great nominees. They will try all sorts of tricks starting very soon. Republicans must not allow them to do that. We have a country to run and many big problems to solve, mostly created by Democrats. Republicans, be smart and tough. So if you remember, in January 6, 2020, people had started chanting, HANG, Mike Pence, and, turned on him because he wanted to go certify the vote, certify the will of the people. So on January 6th, both the House representatives and senators will certify the vote, and the vice president proceeds over that. So I think he's literally prepping his base for when they finally say, hey, this doesn't look right. Because it's not just, he's phrasing it to make it seem like it's going to be his cabinet picks or whatever, which we've known has had problems. But no, I think it's going to be him who has problems. Just today, the U.S. Treasury Department released sanctions on certain Iran and Russia entities. And, these just so happen to be the 2 countries that Elon Musk has strange connections to, that he's communicating with leaders against U.S. policy and laws. So very interesting. Let me know, what do you think? Do you think he's worried for him getting in, for them saying something's wrong with his election? Or do you think he literally just means like his cabinet picks or some reps and stuff like that? Because I don't know. I think he's prepping them. Monday, January 6th. I'm scared.
Okay, I'm gonna reshoot this because my kid is still awake. My dogs are being annoying. It's just Anyway, so I've been fighting off bots all day. They've been out in droves. I duetted and reposted and did like a text post, all referring to a creator named Saint Gael. I have been pronouncing the dude's name wrong. I wholeheartedly apologize for that. He gives a comprehensive, detailed rundown of the process that is about to unfold in the next few days regarding the tomfoolery. First thing that's going to happen is tomorrow the new Congress is going to be seated. Their job is to pick a speaker. We want them to do this quickly. We don't want the howler monkey situation of last time where it took 15 rounds for them to pick Kevin McCarthy just to oust him 3 months later. We just want them to pick somebody quickly. Hopefully it's not Mike Johnson, but either way. Anyway, once they've picked their person, the next thing is that the DNI and the DOJ is going to come in and they're going to brief Congress. This could take a few days. We would like for this process to be as long as it needs to be. Now, January 6th is part of, nothing is going to happen until January 6th. Let me just make sure that is abundantly clear. There's not a magic sky daddy that's going to change anything until January 6th, and it is going to go down as such. During the process, there is a time when basically a member of each house is going to stand up and going to object. During that objection, they are going to present why it is likely to be a third party agency, 3-letter agency, DOJ, DNI, FBI. They are going to be the ones that are going to present the information to Congress. They have been briefed about some of this. This will be the confounding evidence to say, hey, this is the tomfoolery. So at that point, they're going to break, they're going to vote. There's every chance that at this point, they will decide to extend and investigate for 45 days, in which case Joe Biden and Kamala go nowhere. Everybody just stays in their places. Hence why Biden said, "You're not going anywhere, kid." Probably because they're aware that the evidence will meet this requirement. He also said, "And neither am I." So, it gets way more complicated from there, okay? So I am hoping that in this, that they can kick out inauguration. It will push it back to March. It will give the 3-letter agencies time to actually investigate. We will have a much bigger picture of what actually happened, what's going on, etc., etc. The other thing that might happen is the 14th Amendment, Article 3. The thing about this is that he's kind of screwed either way. The reason is because Congress can hold him accountable for January 6th, 2021. They can do that. They are well within their rights to decide to not swear him in. It has to be Congress that decides that. The other thing, though, and this is the bigger piece, is that it may not come down to his role in the insurrection. It might be because he has vowed to pardon the January 6 rioters, which would be providing comfort to an insurrectionist. That is literally what that means. So, things could get a little bit spicy, okay? We could end up any number of avenues with this. I think the most likely is that we're going to take a break for 45 days. Everybody remains in place and we investigate. I think that's the most likely to happen. But really, quite honestly, it could go any number of different ways. It could be a contingent election or a contingent certification. It wasn't, I kept saying it was a contested certification. It's a contingent certification. That wouldn't be so good for the blue team, okay? That would be a Hail Mary if I've ever seen one. But it could go to that too. So, like I said, watch St. Gael's video, and we're just going to have to see how this plays out. I'm going by what Biden has said to Kamala on a hot mic recently, that the option that they're most leaning towards is going to be to stop, put a pin in this, and investigate for the next 45 days. To me, that seems like it's not really inconveniencing anybody, and that way we're actually able to really discover what has happened and see what connections are made. Dumpty ain't gonna like that, though, so...
Good morning, my friends. MAGA has come across my content and they've been extremely confident in the fact that no, the Republican majority will not vote against Donald Trump even if there is severe evidence of interference. So they are confident that he will not lose his presidency, and I'll tell you this. Checkmate, motherfucker. Because there are lawful guidance that if the conservative side does not actually sustain undeniable proof, that means a lawful dissolution of the rule of law and their actual authority. Why? Because they are subverting the constitutional republic, the constitutional authority. There is no provision that allows for them to do that against the constitutional supremacy. That is Article 6 Supremacy Clause and Article 6 Section 3. What does that mean? That means that lawfully, if they refuse undeniable evidence, that gives us the same solution as 1861 through 1865. Research those dates. What do you think that is?
Well, friends, if we cared about or chose to remain loyal to the text of the Constitution, then by all rights, January 6th should be Trump disqualification day. But do we really expect it to be? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, as January 6th election certification day approaches, let's have one more go at the 14th Amendment's disqualification of an insurrectionist from being sworn in as president, academic discussion though this may prove to be. I want to start by reading a short piece that ran in The Hill a few days ago, authored by two lawyers, each of whom was previously a clerk at the United States Supreme Court. Headline, Congress has the power to block Trump from taking office, but lawmakers must act now. And that article begins, the Constitution provides that an oath-breaking insurrectionist is ineligible to be president. This is the plain wording of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Quote, no person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. This disability can be removed by a 2/3 vote in each house. Disqualification is based on insurrection against the Constitution and not the government. The evidence of Donald Trump's engaging in such insurrection is overwhelming. The matter has been decided in 3 separate forums, 2 of which were fully contested with the active participation of Trump's counsel. The first fully contested proceeding was Trump's second impeachment trial. On January 13th, 2021, then President Trump was impeached for incitement of insurrection. At the trial in the Senate, 7 Republicans joined all Democrats to provide a majority for conviction, but failed to reach the 2/3 vote required for removal from office. Inciting insurrection encompasses, quote, engaging in insurrection against the Constitution or giving aid and comfort to the enemies thereof. the very grounds for disqualification specified in Section 3. The second contested proceeding was the Colorado 5-day judicial due process hearing, where the court found by clear and convincing evidence that President Trump engaged in insurrection, as those terms are used in Section 3. The Colorado Supreme Court affirmed. On further appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, the court held that states lack the power to disqualify candidates for federal office and that federal legislation was required to enforce Section 3. The court did not address the finding that Trump had engaged in insurrection. Finally, there's the bipartisan inquiry of the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. More than half of the witnesses whose testimony was displayed at its 9 public hearings were Republicans, including members of the Trump administration. The inescapable conclusion of this evidence is that Trump engaged in insurrection against the Constitution. In particular, Trump unlawfully demanded that his Vice President, Mike Pence, throw out votes in the Electoral College for political opponent Joe Biden, a power he did not have. While the riot was in progress, Trump used Pence's rejection of his demand to further inflame the crowd and cause them to chant, "Hang Mike Pence." Now, some will argue that the Supreme Court decision in the Colorado case, Trump versus Anderson, precludes or prevents Congress from rejecting electoral votes when they convene on January 6th on the basis of the 14th Amendment disqualification. This view lacks merit for 3 reasons. First, the majority's suggestion that there must be new implementing federal legislation passed pursuant to the enforcement power specified in the 14th Amendment is what lawyers call dicta. Dicta are the musings of an opinion that are not required to decide the case. The holding that Section 3 is not self-authenticating may be an alternate holding, but thoughts about the kind of implementing statute required are plain dicta. Dicta are not precedential. The 4 dissenters in the Supreme Court opinion strenuously objected to this part of the opinion as overreach by the majority, the 5 majority justices, overreach to decide a question not presented. This overreach is a power grab, which Congress is not required to credit. Second, counting the Electoral College votes is a matter uniquely assigned to Congress by the Constitution. Under well-settled law, this fact deprives the Supreme Court of a voice in the matter because the rejection of the vote on constitutionally specified grounds is a non-reviewable political question. Third, specific legislation designed for this situation already exists. The Electoral Count Act was first enacted in 1887 and later amended and restated in 2022. That statute provides a detailed mechanism for resolving disputes as to the validity of Electoral College votes. And friends, here is probably the most important passage. The Act, the Electoral Count Act, specifies 2 grounds for objection to an electoral vote. 1, if the electors from a state were not lawfully certified. Of course, we saw that in the Trump fake elector scheme last time he tried to steal a presidential election in 2020, but that doesn't really apply this time. Or 2, if the vote of 1 or more electors was not regularly given. A vote for a candidate disqualified by the Constitution is plainly in accordance with the normal use of words not regularly given. Disqualification for engaging in insurrection is no different from disqualification based on other constitutional requirements, such as age, citizenship from birth, and 14 years residency in the United States. Now, here is the procedure that would be involved if members of Congress decided to object to certifying the Electoral College count. To make an objection under the Count Act requires a petition signed by 20% of the members of each House. Then, if the objection is sustained by majority vote in each House, the vote is not counted, and the number of votes required to be elected is reduced by the number of disqualified votes. If all votes for Trump were not counted, Kamala Harris would be elected president. Now, friends, this last paragraph is where the rubber meets the road, at least procedurally, because disqualification of an insurrectionist from being sworn in as president would require at least some Republican participation. The unlikelihood of congressional Republicans doing anything that might elect Harris as president is obvious. But Democrats need to take a stand against electoral college votes for a person disqualified by the Constitution from holding office unless and until the disability is removed. No less is required by their oath to support and defend the Constitution. Friends, let's get down to brass tacks. First of all, I know what I would do on January 6th if I were ever in a position and I were ever called upon to say, do you object or do you support? Do you vote in favor of certifying the Electoral College votes for an adjudicated insurrectionist? My whole life, I took my oath of office damned seriously. I took the oath several times, starting back in the 80s as a United States Army officer. When I left the Army and joined the Department of Justice, I took that oath again. I swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I would not be upholding that oath if I were in a position to vote whether an adjudicated insurrectionist should be allowed to serve in federal office, never mind the highest office in the land. I couldn't, in good conscience, vote in favor of an insurrectionist becoming president. That would violate my oath of office, and I wouldn't hide behind the Supreme Court musings and ramblings and dicta, saying, gosh darn it, we know the Constitution doesn't say it, but we'd like to see some new federal legislation, which, psst, it's never going to happen. We know it's never going to happen, but let's just put it in there. But friends, let's be honest. What should happen and what will happen, as different as night and day, as different as black and white, as different as dictatorship and democracy. What will happen is Donald Trump is very likely to be certified as the next president of the United States. What should happen is politicians should rise up, should respect their oath of office, and should vote that an adjudicated insurrectionist is disqualified from holding office again. Because justice matters.
So the shit's hitting the fan. Basically, Iran and Russia have been sanctioned for beauty pageant meddling. Attempted, at least, I'm sure. Is the fact that it's like just trickling out makes me think that there's a 10 coming. I just think that they are holding back until to brief Congress before releasing the information. That way it doesn't appear like it's like anything coercive. And it probably will be DOJ or DNI that comes in, updates or briefs Congress when the new Congress convenes. We might not know much until the 6th. But here's the thing, I don't think, and I think they've been sitting on this for a minute, and I think the reason why there's like rage tweeting coming out of from Dumpty himself is because I think that I don't think he was going to be president either way. I think the 14th Amendment, because Jamie Raskin already said that they were going to disqualify him via the 14th Amendment. And he doesn't strike me as the type that's going to kid about that. So combine that with beauty pageant meddling from this cycle, yeah. So I think it's going to come down to Kamala or Vance. Depends on the meddling attempts. Here's the other thing too. That might explain why JD has been nowhere to be found. Because with JD, he's not stupid. He's probably realized that, that the 14th Amendment is going to disqualify homeboy here. So let me stay away from him as much as I can. So if the shit hits the fan, he can be like, yeah, I didn't know anything about it. I haven't been around. Yeah. I don't think Trump is going to ever enter the White House again. And I think that would have been regardless because of previous cycle meddling, previous beauty pageants where he meddled with the results. So now it's just a matter of the interference. Congress, there's a whole nother set of rules for this part. Yeah, it's like the 20th Amendment dictates how this goes. I want to say 20th, I could be wrong. Could be wrong on that. I'm not a lawyer. But don't be surprised if January 6th is weird. Because I don't think it's going to be a normal certification for this election. Or I mean, this beauty pageant. Yeah. I think it's gonna be a different one. But the fact that there's already sanctions, I think it's just gonna, I think this is just the very beginning trickle. This is like a drop or two of a lot. Like the fact that it's not being released yet makes me think this is something major, because usually it would be a thing. I think, like I said, I think they're waiting to brief Congress and then release it to the public.